In the fog-shrouded twilight of a London autumn evening in 1933, the narrow confines of Oxford Yard echoed with the distant hum of Oxford Street's bustling traffic. A lone constable, patrolling his beat, stumbled upon a grim tableau: the body of Inspector Reginald Black, a stalwart of Scotland Yard, slumped against a damp brick wall. His face was contorted in agony, a vial of poison clutched in his rigid hand. No witnesses, no cries, only the silent accusation of death. Who would slay a guardian of the law in such a brazen manner? The mystery beckoned, promising twists as intricate as the fog itself. Chapter 1. The Discovery in Oxford Yard. The autumn fog of 1933 draped London in a shroud of mystery, curling through the labyrinthine alleys like a conspirator's whisper. Oxford Yard, a narrow cobbled passage tucked behind the frenetic pulse of Oxford Street, lay silent under the weight of twilight. Gas lamps flickered weakly, their amber glow struggling against the encroaching mist. The air carried the damp chill of October, mingled with the faint tang of coal smoke and the distant clatter of hansoms navigating the city's arteries. It was here, in this forgotten crevice of the metropolis, that Constable Albert Wren, a young officer with a nervous gait, patrolled his beat. His boots echoed on the uneven stones, a rhythm broken only by the occasional rustle of rats in the shadows, or the muffled laughter from a nearby public house. Wren's lantern swayed as he turned into Oxford Yard, its beams slicing through the fog to reveal a scene that would haunt him for years. Slumped against the damp brick wall, his overcoat splayed like broken wings, lay Inspector Reginald Black of Scotland Yard. His face, usually stern with the authority of a man who'd tamed London's underworld, was frozen in a grimace of agony. His right hand clutched a small glass vial, its contents drained, leaving only the glint of residue under the lantern's light. Wren's breath caught, his heart pounding as he knelt beside the body. The vial confirmed, his voice clinical but strained. Death would have been swift, minutes at most. No external wounds, no signs of a scuffle. He either took it himself or he trailed off, glancing at Japp. Suicide? Japp scoffed, shaking his head. Black wasn't the sort. He lived for the Yard, for justice. Someone did this. His gaze swept the alley, taking in the slick cobbles, the grimy walls, the narrow exit leading back to Oxford Street. The scene was pristine, disturbingly so, as if the killer had vanished into the fog itself. Japp's jaw tightened. Find me witnesses, Wren. Anyone who saw or heard anything. Wren, still pale, stammered, No one, sir. The alley was quiet when I found him, just him in the fog. The constable's words hung heavy, the absence of clues as oppressive as the mist. Japp's men fanned out, searching the alley for anything, a footprint, a discarded cigarette, a scrap of fabric. But Oxford Yard, in its cold indifference, offered nothing. Japp turned back to Black's body, his gloved hand carefully prying open the inspector's coat. In the inner pocket, he found a crumpled note, its elegant script stark against the cheap paper. Justice comes for all. The words sent a chill through Japp, not for their meaning but for their precision, as if written by a hand accustomed to control. A threat? A taunt? He murmured, passing the note to Harrow. Bag it. We'll need it analyzed. The surgeon nodded, slipping the note into an evidence envelope. Could be a calling card from the killer, or a distraction. Japp grunted, unconvinced. Black had been a rising star at Scotland Yard, his career marked by relentless pursuit of smugglers, forgers, and thieves. His arrests had dismantled entire networks, earning him both admiration and enmity. A man like Black didn't die by chance, not in a place like Oxford Yard. As the body was lifted onto a stretcher, Japp's mind raced. Black had been investigating a smuggling ring, one with tendrils reaching into London's docks and beyond. Had he uncovered something too dangerous? Or was this personal effects? I want to know who he met, where he went, what he ate. Carter nodded, scribbling in his notebook. Japp's eyes drifted to the note again, its words echoing. Justice comes for all. Was it a warning to others at the yard? A boast from a killer who believed themselves untouchable? The fog thickened, swallowing the gas lamp's glow. Japp's thoughts turned to a man who thrived on such enigmas, a detective whose mind cut through deception like a scalpel. "Carter!" he barked. "Send a telegram to Hercule Poirot. Tell him it's urgent. If anyone can unravel this, it's him." The sergeant hurried off, leaving Japp alone with his thoughts. Poirot, the diminutive Belgian with his waxed moustaches and fastidious habits, had aided the yard before. His little grey cells, as he called them, had a knack for seeing what others missed. Japp could almost hear Poirot's accented voice now, chiding him for overlooking the obvious. But what was obvious here? A vial, a note, a body in an alley, each piece a fragment of a puzzle that refused to align. As the hearse rolled away, Japp lingered in Oxford Yard, the fog curling around him like a living thing. He scanned the rooftops, the darkened windows overlooking the alley. A prickle of unease ran down his spine, the sense of being watched. He shook it off, attributing it to the night's grim work. But high above, on a shadowed rooftop, a figure stood motionless, their silhouette blending with the chimneys. They watched the scene below, their breath steady, their purpose unclear. As Japp turned to leave, the figure slipped away, vanishing into the London night like a ghost. The alley fell silent again, save for the drip of water from a rusted pipe. Oxford Yard held its secrets close. But Japp knew one thing. This was no ordinary murder. The killer had chosen their stage with care, and the note suggested they weren't finished. Would Poirot arrive in time to prevent another death? Or had the curtain only just risen on a darker act? The smile playing beneath his green eyes. Chief Inspector James Japp awaited him at the station's exit, his burly frame dwarfing the constables at his side. His face, weathered by years of chasing criminals through London's underbelly, softened at the sight of the diminutive Belgian. "Poirot, you old devil," Japp greeted, extending a hand. "It's a grim business, this. Inspector Black, dead in Oxford Yard, poisoned, of all things. I need those grey cells of yours." Poirot bowed slightly, his hat tipping with precision. "Mon ami Japp, it is most distressing to hear of such a tragedy. A detective of Scotland Yard, slain in so brazen a manner, c'est scandaleux. But fear not, Hercule Poirot shall bring order to this chaos." His voice, accented and melodic, carried a confidence that belied the complexity of the case. As they stepped into a waiting police car, the fog thickened, muffling the clatter of hooves and the hum of early motorcars on Praed Street. En route to Scotland Yard, Japp briefed Poirot with the urgency of a man staring down a storm. "Reginald Black was one of our best, relentless, sharp as a tack. He was investigating a smuggling ring, big operation moving stolen art and jewels through the docks, Made enemies, naturally. Criminals he'd locked up, rivals in the force. Maybe even someone closer. Japp's brow furrowed. His wife, Eleanor, said he'd been tense lately, secretive, kept muttering about corruption and trust. Poirot's fingers steepled, his eyes narrowing. The method, it is significant, no? Poison, cyanide, you say, requires intimacy or cunning. One does not administer such a death without knowledge of the victim's habits. Tell me, what was found at the scene? Japp recounted the details. The vial clutched in Black's hand, the cryptic note reading, "Justice comes for all," the absence of struggle, and the eerie stillness of Oxford Yard. Poirot nodded, his mind already turning over the pieces. The note, it is theatrical. A killer who wishes to speak, perhaps to boast. And the smuggling ring, oui? But there is more. Black was methodical. He would not leave such work exposed unless interrupted. A faint scent of lavender lingered in the drawer, odd for a detective's office. Poirot filed it away mentally, his grey cells humming. Japp introduced the initial suspects, each a thread in the tapestry of Black's life. First, Eleanor Black, his wife. Elegant woman, runs in high society circles. She stands to inherit a tidy sum, insurance, property. But she claims she was shopping on Oxford Street when it happened. Next, Sergeant Harlan Crowe, Black's colleague at the Yard. Ambitious, bit of a hothead. Black outranked him, blocked his promotion once. Crowe's alibi is duty logs, but they're shaky. Then Victor Slade, a released convict Black had sent to prison for robbery. Swore revenge, but says he was at a pub. Rough type, fresh scars on his knuckles. Edmund Black, the victim's younger brother, came next. A gambler, always in debt. Reginald bailed him out, but there was tension. Finally, Lydia Voss, a mysterious woman seen arguing with Black days before his death. She's cagey, says it was business but won't elaborate. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A fine cast, mon ami, each with motive, each with secrets. We shall meet them, oui? At the Black residence. Arrange it for this afternoon. Japp agreed, dispatching a constable to summon the suspects to the Mayfair home. As they prepared to leave, a clerk rushed in, breathless, clutching an envelope. "Sir, this came for you. Anonymous. No postmark." Japp tore it open, revealing a single line in the same elegant script as the crime scene note. The Belgian will fail. Poirot's moustache twitched, a spark of amusement in his eyes. Ah, the killer knows of Hercule Poirot. They challenge me, Japp, and I accept. The game, it begins. He handed the note back, his mind already dissecting its implications. Was it a taunt from the murderer, or a distraction planted by another? The script matched the earlier note, but the paper was finer, suggesting ivy-clad walls. Preparations were underway. Eleanor Black, pale and composed in widow's black, greeted them at the door. "Chief Inspector, Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice steady but her eyes red-rimmed. "I trust you'll find who did this to my husband." Poirot studied her, noting the elegance of her silk dress, the tremor in her gloved hand. Grief or guilt? He bowed. "Madame, Hercule Poirot assures you, the truth shall not remain hidden." As they entered the drawing room, where the suspects would soon gather, a maid served tea, her hands trembling as she poured. Poirot's gaze lingered on the tray, sugar cubes, milk, fine china. A fleeting thought, poison could hide in such innocence. He filed it away, his mind a ledger of possibilities. But as Japp outlined the interrogation plan, Eleanor Black swayed, her face draining of color. The maid caught her just as she collapsed. the teacup clattering to the floor. "The note!" Eleanor gasped, her voice barely audible. "That horrible note!" Her eyes fluttered shut, and the room fell silent, save for the ticking of a mantel clock. Was her faint a genuine shock at the anonymous threat, or a performance to deflect suspicion? Poirot's eyes met Japp's, both men sensing the deepening enigma. The fog outside pressed against the windows, as if Oxford Yard's secrets had followed them here. Chapter 3. The Suspects Gather. The black residence in Mayfair stood as a monument to understated elegance, its Georgian facade softened by ivy that clung like whispered secrets. Inside, the drawing room glowed under the amber light of Art Deco lamps, their geometric patterns casting intricate shadows on velvet curtains. The air held a faint scent of lavender and beeswax polish, mingling with the tension that hung over the assembled company. It was October 1933, and the fog outside pressed against the tall windows, as if eager to eavesdrop on the drama unfolding within. Hercule Poirot, his posture impeccable despite the room's oppressive mood, stood at the center, his green eyes scanning the 5 figures seated before him. Each was a suspect in the murder of Inspector Reginald Black, and each, Poirot knew, concealed truths behind carefully crafted facade. Black, fidgeting with a cigarette, and Lydia Voss, enigmatic behind a fur-trimmed coat. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, each suspect a piece in Poirot's mental chessboard. Eleanor Black, dressed in mourning silk that shimmered like midnight, dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "My husband was devoted to his work," she said, her voice steady but brittle, like fine china on the verge of cracking. "He was distant these last weeks, consumed by his cases. I begged him to rest, but Reginald never listened." Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying the composure she fought to maintain. Poirot noted the gesture, his mind cataloguing it alongside her earlier feint. Was it grief, or a performance to deflect scrutiny? Sergeant Harlan Crowe sat ramrod straight, his uniform buttons gleaming under the lamplight. His square jaw clenched as Poirot's gaze lingered on him. "Black was a fine officer," Crowe said, his tone clipped, "but he stepped on toes. Ambitious men make enemies, Mr. Poirot. I was on duty when it happened. Check the logs." His eyes, however, flicked to Japp, as if seeking confirmation or challenge. Poirot's moustache twitched. The logs, he recalled, bore signs of tampering, a detail to probe. Victor Slade, the released convict, sprawled in his chair, his rough hands marked with fresh scars. His Cockney accent cut through the room's refinement. "Black framed me for that robbery 5 years back. I did my time. Got out last month. Yeah, I hated him. Who wouldn't? But I was at the Dog and Duck. Mates'll swear it." His sneer suggested defiance, but his scarred knuckles hinted at recent violence. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A man of grudges, but was he a man of murder? Edmund Black, the victim's younger brother, lit a cigarette with shaking hands, the match's flare illuminating his haggard face. "Reginald helped me with my debts," he said, avoiding Poirot's gaze. "He was the good son, always bailing me out. Why would I harm him? I was at a club, playing cards." His voice wavered. "And let us begin with the facts." He produced a photograph of the crime scene, passed to him by Japp. The image showed Black's body slumped in Oxford Yard, the vial in his hand, the note tucked in his pocket. "This note, justice comes for all. It is a message. But to whom? And why?" Japp interjected, holding up an evidence envelope. "We've had it analysed. The script's elegant, almost calligraphic, not your common thug's hand." Poirot nodded, revealing a red herring to test the room's reactions. "There was another note," he said, his voice deliberate. found near the body, implicating Monsieur Slade. But the handwriting, it does not match. A forgery, perhaps, to mislead. Slade's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Told you I didn't do it," he growled, but his fists clenched, betraying agitation. Poirot turned to Eleanor. "Madame Black, you mentioned your husband's distance. Did he speak of threats?" She hesitated, her handkerchief twisting in her hands. "He said old cases haunted him. Men he'd sent to prison they never forget. And he mentioned a woman, perhaps an affair." Her voice broke, and Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. An affair? A motive for jealousy, or a planted lie? Crowe shifted, his chair creaking. Black was paranoid, kept files locked, wouldn't share his leads. Said the yard had rotten apples. Poirot's eyebrow arched. Corruption within Scotland Yard, a dangerous thread to pull. He filed it away, turning to Edmund. "And you, monsieur, your debts, did they strain your brother's patience?" Edmund stubbed out his cigarette. "He was angry, yes, but he always paid. Said it was family." His eyes darted to Slade, a flicker of fear. Lydia Voss remained silent, her expression unreadable. Poirot pressed her. "Mademoiselle, your business with Black, what was its nature?" She smiled faintly, deflecting. "Information, Mr. Poirot, nothing more." Her evasiveness was a clue in itself, a shadow in the fog of the case. As the maid entered with a tea tray, Poirot's sharp eyes, Slade's pubmates questionable, Edmund's card game hazy, and Voss's contact unverifiable. Each alibi was a thread, fraying under Poirot's scrutiny. Poirot revealed another clue, a handkerchief found in Black's pocket, stained with lipstick matching Eleanor's shade. "Madame, yours?" She gasped, shaking her head. "I lost one weeks ago." The fabric, Poirot noted silently, was too pristine, a planted red herring, meant to incriminate. The killer was playing a game of misdirection, but Poirot was no novice. As the interrogation drew to a close, the room's tension was palpable, a taut string waiting to snap. Poirot paused, letting the silence weigh on them. "The truth, it is like the fog outside. It obscures, but it cannot hide forever. Hercule Poirot sees through it." He bowed slightly, dismissing them for now, but his eyes missed nothing. Crowe's clenched jaw, Slade's scarred knuckles, Edmund's nervous tick, Voss's veiled glance, Eleanor's trembling hands. As the suspects rose to leave, a sudden crack shattered the silence. A gunshot from the street outside. The room froze, teacups rattling in their saucers. Japp rushed to the window, Poirot close behind. The fog obscured the shooter, but a figure darted across the street, vanishing into an alley. "A warning," Japp muttered, his hand on his revolver. Or an attempt. Poirot's mind raced. Was this an attack on the suspects? A message to him? Or another layer of the killer's game? The shot had come from the direction of Oxford Street, too close to Oxford Yard for coincidence. The mystery deepened, and the stakes had just risen. Interrogating the wife. The garden of the Black residence in Mayfair was a quiet haven, a stark contrast to the fog-choked streets of 1933 London beyond its iron gates. Autumn leaves drifted lazily to the ground, their russet and gold hues carpeting the gravel paths where Hercule Poirot stood, his polished shoes crunching softly as he faced Eleanor Black. The widow, clad in mourning silk that shimmered faintly in the weak October sunlight, stood beneath a leaf. The rustle of her silk dress. "Anything to find who did this to Reginald?" Poirot adjusted his hat, the brim casting a faint shadow across his waxed moustaches. "Bon, let us begin with your husband's state of mind. You said he was distant, oui? Did he confide in you? Perhaps of threats, of fears? Eleanor's gaze drifted to the rose bushes, their thorns stark against the fading blooms. He was preoccupied, she admitted, her gloved fingers twisting the lace handkerchief. His work consumed him. The smuggling case, the late nights at the yard. He spoke of threats, yes, from men he'd sent to prison. And she hesitated, her breath catching. He hinted at an affair. A woman he'd met through his investigations. He swore it was over, but I wasn't sure. Poirot's eyebrow arched, a silent note in his mental ledger. An affair, a motive as old as time, cloaked in jealousy or betrayal. This woman, madame, did he name her? Eleanor shook her head, her eyes glistening. No. But I suspected Lydia Voss. I saw them together once, at a cafe near the Strand. She was too familiar, too secretive. Her voice trembled, and Poirot noted the flicker of emotion, genuine pain or a calculated performance. He pressed gently, his tone soothing yet probing. And your own movements, madame, on the evening of the murder. You were shopping, no? Eleanor produced a receipt from her handbag, its Selfridge's logo crisp, despite the creases. I was at Oxford Street buying gloves. The receipt is timed at 6:45 p.m. Reginald was found shortly after. Poirot examined the slip, his gloved fingers tracing the ink. The timestamp was precise, too precise, perhaps, for a woman in mourning. Most convenient, he murmured, his voice neutral but his eyes sharp. And yet Oxford Street is but a stone's throw from Oxford Yard. One could, in theory, slip away and return. Eleanor's face paled, her hand rising untouched by the grime of Oxford Yard. A red herring, perhaps, Poirot said softly, his tone deliberate. Planted to cast suspicion. The killer, he is clever, no? Japp nodded, his scowl deepening. Clever enough to stage a suicide. The vial of cyanide, Black was holding it, but no signs of struggle. Whoever did this knew his habits. Poirot's mind turned over the detail. A new piece in the puzzle. Cyanide required proximity, trust, or deception. Madame, he continued, did your husband have habits, routines that others knew? A cigar, perhaps, or a particular drink? Eleanor frowned, thoughtful. He smoked cigars, yes, every evening after dinner. And tea, he was particular about his tea. Always took it with sugar. Poirot's moustache twitched, recalling the sugar cubes in the drawing room, their faint sheen a silent warning. Sugar, oui, a most innocent vehicle for poison. He filed the thought away, his grey cells weaving connections. The handkerchief, the receipt, the affair, each was a thread, but which led to the truth? He turned to Japp. Mon ami, have you examined Black's personal effects further? His cigar case, perhaps? Japp shook his head. Not yet, but it's at the Yard. I'll have it checked for traces. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. A cigar, laced with cyanide, could kill slowly, absorbed through smoke. A subtle method, befitting a killer with intimate knowledge. But Eleanor's reaction to the handkerchief seemed genuine, her shock too raw, her denial too fervent. Or was it? As they spoke, a groundskeeper raked leaves nearby, his movements slow and deliberate. Poirot's eyes flicked to him, noting the man's averted gaze, his cap pulled low. An observer, perhaps, or merely a servant. The garden, with its high walls and shadowed corners, felt suddenly less like a sanctuary and more like a stage for secrets. Japp's voice broke the silence, urgent. Poirot, we've got something new. Black's will. It names Eleanor as the primary beneficiary. A hefty sum, enough to clear any debts and then some. Eleanor's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "That's not what it seems," he said, striding toward it. Inside, amidst tools and sacks of soil, he found a small tin box, half hidden under a tarp. Inside was a letter, sealed, but addressed to an unnamed recipient. The handwriting was Eleanor's, its tone intimate. "My darling, we must be careful. He suspects." Poirot's heart quickened, but his face remained impassive as he handed the letter to Jap. "A discovery, mon ami? A letter of love or betrayal?" Eleanor, watching from the path, froze, her eyes locked on the paper. "That's private!" she exclaimed, her voice sharp with panic. "It was to Reginald, a note from years ago." Her explanation was swift, but Poirot's gray cells churned. Was it truly an old letter, or evidence of a lover complicit in murder? Jap pocketed the letter, his expression grim. "We'll analyze it. Handwriting, paper, the lot." Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere, tracing the threads. The receipt placing Eleanor near Oxford Yard, the handkerchief's suspicious cleanliness, the letter's ambiguous recipient. The garden, once a place of solace, now felt like a web, each leaf and shadow concealing a clue. As they turned to leave, the groundskeeper vanished behind the shed, his rake abandoned. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The eyes. They see what others miss," he murmured. The letter was a bombshell. But was it the key to the killer's identity, or another of their carefully laid traps? The fog beyond the garden seemed to pulse with secrets, and Oxford Yard's shadow loomed ever closer. Chapter 5. The Released Convict. The East End of London in October 1933 was a labyrinth of soot-stained tenements and narrow alleys, where the fog clung like a conspirator to every crumbling brick. Victor Slade's flat, tucked above a pawnbroker's shop in Whitechapel, reeked of stale tobacco and desperation. The air was thick with the tang of cheap gin and the distant wail of a street vendor hawking wilted cabbages. Hercule Poirot, his pristine overcoat a stark contrast to the grime, stepped carefully over a splintered floorboard, his silver-topped cane tapping a rhythm of purpose. Chief Inspector James Jap followed, his burly frame filling the doorway. "Black? Yeah, he stitched me up good for that robbery. Said I nicked jewels I never saw. 5 years in Pentonville. And for what? But I didn't kill him. Was at the Dog and Duck. Half a dozen mates'll swear it." His Cockney accent was rough, his tone defiant, but his scarred knuckles flexed, betraying recent violence. Poirot's moustache twitched, a subtle sign of his mental gears turning. "Your alibi, it is convenient, Monsieur Slade. But alibis, they can be bought, like gin in this place. Tell me, these scars, fresh, oui? A fight, perhaps?" Slade's eyes narrowed, his hand brushing the scars absently. "Got into a scrap, yeah. Nothing to do with Black. Bloke owed me money. Got rough." Poirot tilted his head, his gaze unrelenting. "And this bloke, he was Edmund Black, the inspector's brother, no? A gambler, deep in debt. You argued with him. Over what?" Slade's jaw tightened, but he shrugged. "Edmund owed me a tenner from a card game. Said his brother'd pay it, but Black never did. I leaned on him, sure, but I didn't touch the inspector." Jap snorted, flipping through his notebook. "Convenient, Slade, that you're tied to both brothers. And we found your fingerprints on the cyanide vial at the scene. Care to explain that?" Slade's face darkened, his fists clenching. "Impossible! I never touched no vial." Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "The fingerprints, they are too perfect, mon ami Jap. Placed with care, as if to accuse. Another of the killer's tricks, perhaps." He revealed a red herring. The prints, upon closer analysis, lacked the smudges of natural handling, suggesting they were planted. Slade's relief was palpable, but his eyes darted to the window, as if expecting trouble. Poirot paced the small room, his cane tapping rhythmically on the warped floorboards. The flat's meager furnishings told a story of a man scraping by, but a crumpled betting slip on the table hinted at deeper troubles. Monsieur, his eyes flicking to the door. Night before Black died, outside a pub in Bethnal Green. He begged for time to pay, said Reginald was cutting him off. Poirot's mind raced, connecting Edmund's desperation to the murder. A brother in debt, a detective on the verge of exposing corruption, each piece a fragment of the puzzle. Japp produced a photograph of the crime scene, the vial glinting in Black's lifeless hand. This vial, Slade. It's not the sort you find in a chemist's. Specially made, lab grade. You've got connections, haven't you? Old mates from the robbery days. Slade's laugh was hollow. You think I'm running a poison shop? I'm a thief, not a chemist. Poirot's gaze lingered on him, noting the sweat beading on his brow despite the chill. Fear or guilt? As the interrogation deepened, Poirot revealed another clue. A witness from the Dog and Duck, a barmaid, confirmed Slade's presence, but noted he left for an hour around the time of the murder. An hour, Monsieur Slade, Poirot said softly, is enough to cross London, to slip into Oxford Yard. Slade slammed a fist on the table, the betting slip fluttering to the floor. I was back by 8. Ask her again. His outburst drew Japp's hand to his truncheon, but Poirot remained serene, his grey cells weaving connections. The flat's single window rattled as a gust of wind carried the fog's chill inside. Poirot paused, letting the silence press on Slade. You knew Black's habits, no? His evening walks, perhaps? Someone did, someone close enough to poison without struggle. Slade's eyes widened, but he said nothing, his silence a clue in itself. Poirot's mind turned to the cigar case at the Yard, unexamined but potentially key. Cyanide could be laced in smoke, a method subtle and sinister. As they prepared to leave, Japp's constable appeared at the door, breathless. Sir, we've got the cigar case results. Traces of cyanide, faint, but there. Poirot's moustache twitched, a spark of triumph in his eyes. Ah, the cigar. It speaks. Black smoked each evening, oui? A method most intimate. The attacker was swift, a blade glinting in the dim light. Poirot sidestepped, his cane knocking the weapon aside, and the figure fled, boots echoing on the cobbles. Japp gave chase, but the fog swallowed the assailant, leaving only the echo of their escape. Blimey, Japp panted, returning empty-handed. Hired thug, you reckon? Slade's doing? Poirot's eyes narrowed, scanning the alley. Or someone protecting a deeper secret, mon ami. The killer. They watch us still. He glanced back at Slade's flat, where the convict stood at the window, his face unreadable. The ambush was no random act. It was a warning, or a desperate attempt to silence. The fog closed in, wrapping Whitechapel in its embrace. Poirot's mind churned, the clues piling like leaves in Oxford Yard. The planted fingerprints, the cyanide-laced cigar, Slade's shaky alibi. Was he a scapegoat, or a player in a larger conspiracy? The attack suggested the killer was close, their moves growing bolder. The game, as Poirot had said, was well and truly afoot. Chapter 6. Jealousy at the Yard. The halls of Scotland Yard in 1933 were a fortress of order. their oak-panelled walls and polished floors echoing with the purpose of justice. Yet, as Hercule Poirot navigated the labyrinthine corridors toward Sergeant Harlan Crow's office, the air felt heavy with secrets, as if the very stones whispered of betrayal. The fog outside pressed against the tall windows, casting a pall over the building, while the distant clatter of typewriters and the murmur of constables filled the space with restless energy. Poirot's patent leather shoes clicked precisely on the tiles, his silver-topped cane a rhythmic counterpoint to his thoughts. Chief Inspector James Japp strode beside him, his burly frame tense, his notebook clutched like a talisman against the growing complexity of the case. The murder of competed, yes. Black was a fine officer, but he played favorites with the brass. Blocked my promotion last year, said I wasn't ready. I disagreed, but murder? That's absurd. Japp, leaning against the filing cabinet, snorted softly. Absurd or not, Crow, your alibi's shaky. Duty logs say you were at the yard when Black died, but the ink's smudged, altered maybe. He produced a photocopy of the logbook, its entries blurred around the critical hour of 6:30 p.m. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mental gears engaging. The logs, they are a canvas, Monsieur Crow. One paints truth or deception upon them. Why the alteration? Crow's eyes flicked to the logbook, then back to Poirot. Minor fudging, nothing more. Overtime hours to cover a debt. I wasn't near Oxford Yard. His voice was steady, but his fingers drummed briefly on the desk, a fleeting betrayal of nerves. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor like a metronome. A debt, you say? To whom? And this debt, did it strain your regard for Inspector Black? Crow hesitated, his jaw tightening. A personal matter, nothing to do with him. Poirot's gaze sharpened, catching the evasion. He produced a small evidence bag, containing a vial of cyanide residue from the yard's evidence lab. This, monsieur, was found on your desk. Traces of cyanide, the same poison that killed your colleague. You had access, no? Crow's face darkened, but he held his ground. I handle evidence, Poirot. Chemicals get around in the lab. I never touched Black's vial. Poirot nodded, revealing a red herring. The cyanide traces were too faint, likely from routine handling, not direct involvement. Yet the coincidence was troubling, a thread to tug. Japp flipped through his notebook, his scowl deepening. We've got a witness, Crow. A constable saw you arguing with Black the day before he died, outside the yard. Raised voices, something about a case gone wrong. Care to explain? Crow's posture stiffened, but he met Japp's gaze. We had words, yes. Black, weren't you? To cover his gambling. Crow's face paled, his hands dropping to his sides. Edmund's a mess, always was. I helped him out for Reginald's sake. Didn't want the family name dragged through the mud. Poirot's grey cells hummed. A debt to Edmund, a rivalry with Reginald. Crow was entangled in the Black family's web, but was he the spider or a fly? The office's single window rattled as a gust of wind carried the fog's chill inside, the electric light flickering briefly. Poirot paused, letting the silence press on Crow. The poison, it is intimate, monsieur. It requires knowledge of the victim's habits. Black smoked cigars, took tea with sugar. You, as his colleague, knew this, oui? Crow's lips tightened, but he nodded. Everyone at the yard knew. He was particular, lit a cigar every evening, like clockwork. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The cigar case, laced with cyanide, was a clue that pointed to someone with access and opportunity, someone like Crow, As the interrogation deepened, Poirot revealed another clue, a memo from Black's files found in the forced drawer, mentioning a disloyal officer in the smuggling case. "This officer, Monsieur Crow, could it be you?" Crow's face hardened, but he shook his head. Black was paranoid, saw traitors everywhere. I was loyal to the Yard. Yet his voice lacked conviction, and Poirot noted the slight tremor in his hands. A man on edge, hiding more than he admitted. Japp produced a photograph of the crime scene, the crumpled note reading, "Justice comes for all." "This note, Crow, elegant script, like the one sent to me. Your handwriting's neat, isn't it? Trained for reports." Crow's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly. "Plenty of people write neatly, Japp. You're grasping." Poirot smiled faintly, filing the reaction away. The note was a taunt, but its author remained elusive, a shadow in the fog. The room grew quieter, the distant sounds of the Yard fading as Poirot's questions cut deeper. "You had opportunity, Monsieur Crow. Access to cyanide, knowledge of Black's habits, a grudge. Yet Hercule Poirot wonders."
Of the case, the cyanide traces, the tampered logs, the missing file, each was a piece, but the puzzle remained incomplete. Crow's ambition and debts pointed to motive, but his denials rang with a certain truth. The corruption angle, whispered by Slade and hinted in Black's memo, loomed larger, suggesting a conspiracy that reached into the Yard's heart. As they reached the Yard's entrance, Poirot paused, his gaze sweeping the bustling hall. Constables hurried past, their faces a blur, but one figure lingered near a stairwell watching, a clerk perhaps, or something more sinister. The missing file was no accident. It was a move in a deadly game, one Poirot was determined to win. The fog thickened, swallowing the gas lamp's glow, and the shadow of Oxford Yard seemed to follow them. Had Crow taken the file to cover his tracks, or was another hand at work, pulling strings from within the Yard itself? The answer lay hidden, but Poirot's gray cells were relentless, and the truth, he knew, would not remain in the shadows forever. Chapter 7. The Mysterious Woman. The discreet tea room in Soho, nestled amid the labyrinth of narrow streets and flickering gas lamps of 1933 London, was a haven for those who preferred shadows to spotlights. Its velvet-draped booths and low-hanging chandeliers muffled the outside world's clamor, the honk of motor cars and the patter of rain on cobblestones, creating an atmosphere thick with intrigue. The air carried the aroma of Darjeeling tea and freshly baked scones, undercut by the faint, acrid tang of cigarette smoke from discreet patrons. Hercule Poirot entered with his usual precision, his overcoat brushed free of raindrops, his waxed mustaches impeccably curled. Chief Inspector James Japp trailed him, his trench coat dripping onto the Persian rugs, his scowl a testament to the case's mounting frustrations. They had arranged this meeting via a cryptic telegram from Lydia Voss, the enigmatic woman seen arguing with Inspector Reginald Black days before his poisoning in Oxford Yard. Lydia Voss sat in a corner booth, her veiled hat casting shadows over sharp features that hinted at continental elegance. Poised like a weapon. The tea room's murmur provided a veil of privacy, but Poirot's green eyes pierced the facade, scanning her every gesture, the slight tremor in her cup, the way her veil fluttered with each breath. Lydia sipped her tea, her movements deliberate. "Inspector Black hired me for a delicate task," she said, her tone measured. "He sought information on a smuggling ring operating through the London docks, artifacts, jewels, perhaps more illicit goods. I have connections in certain circles. I spied for him, uncovered whispers of corruption, not just among thieves, but within the Yard itself." Her words hung in the air, a bombshell wrapped in silk. Poirot's mustache twitched, his grey cells humming with the implications. Corruption at Scotland Yard, a thread that wove through Slade's hints and Crow's evasions. Japp leaned forward, his voice a growl. Corruption? Names, Miss Voss. Black was onto something big, and now he's dead. You were seen near Oxford Yard on the night of the murder, delivering a package, witnesses say. Lydia's eyes flickered, but she held his gaze. I was there, yes, delivering a warning to Reginald. He was targeted, you see. The smugglers, or whoever pulls their strings, knew he was closing in. I slipped him a note about a meeting at the docks, but the fog. I arrived too late. Her alibi was simple. She claimed to be with a contact, a shadowy informant named Elias Kane, verifiable through a receipt from a nearby cafe. Poirot noted the detail, his mind filing it for verification. Convenient, yet plausible in London's underworld. Poirot produced a small evidence bag from his pocket, containing a locket engraved with her initials, L.V., found among Black's effects. This, mademoiselle, was in Inspector Black's possession. A gift, perhaps? Or a token of something more intimate? The locket's gold gleamed under the chandelier light, its chain delicate, suggesting sentiment rather than utility. Lydia's composure faltered for a fraction of a second, her gloved
Internal betrayal. But Poirot probed deeper. And the poisoned letter, mademoiselle, intercepted en route to you, laced with cyanide, the same as killed Black. Someone frames you, non? Lydia's eyes widened, genuine shock etching her features. Framed? I received no such letter, but if it's true, she trailed off, her veil dropping slightly, shadowing her face. The poisoned letter was a false clue, its envelope bearing her name, but postmarked from within London, suggesting an inside job. Poirot's mind raced. A diversion to shift suspicion, or a genuine attempt on her life. He revealed another detail, his voice low. The handwriting on the letter matches the crime scene note. Justice comes for all. Elegant, calligraphic. Your hand, perhaps. She shook her head vehemently. I write plainly, Mr. Poirot. This is the work of someone educated, refined. Japp jotted notes, his pen scratching like claws on paper. The tea room's ambience shifted subtly, the rain intensifying outside, drumming against the windows like impatient fingers. Patrons whispered in booths, oblivious to the drama unfolding. But Poirot sensed eyes upon them. A man in a corner nursing a brandy, his gaze lingering too long. Poirot leaned in, his voice a confidential murmur. Let us speak plainly, mademoiselle. Your accent, your connections, they suggest a past shrouded in mystery. Were you more to Black than an informant? Lydia hesitated, her gloved fingers tracing the locket's outline in her mind's eye. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of years, she whispered, He was my half-brother, Mr. Poirot. Illegitimate, born of an affair our father had in Berlin before the war. Reginald discovered it last year, through old documents. I came to England to protect him, from the smugglers, from the corruption he uncovered. Blood binds us, even in secrecy. The revelation landed like a thunderclap in the quiet booth. Poirot's eyes gleamed with understanding, the pieces aligning. Her warnings, her reluctance, the locket's sentiment. A family tie explained the intimacy without romance, turning the locket from red herring to poignant clue. Japp's jaw dropped, his notebook forgotten. Brother? Why high concluded. The waiter returned with the bill, his presence a brief interruption. Lydia rose gracefully, her coat swirling like a cape. Thank you for listening, gentlemen. She slipped a folded note into Poirot's hand as she passed, her touch fleeting. Poirot's fingers closed around it, his expression unchanging. Japp, oblivious,
paid the bill, and stepped toward the door, muttering about verifying Kane's story. Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle, the fog curling around lampposts like spectral fingers. Poirot unfolded the note in the shelter of the tea-room's awning, his eyes narrowing at the scrawled words, "Trust no one at the Yard." The handwriting was hurried, different from the elegant script of the threats, but its warning was clear. Betrayal lurked within Scotland Yard's ranks. Japp turned, rain dripping from his hat. "What have you got there, Poirot?" But Poirot pocketed it swiftly, his mind ablaze. Lydia Voss had handed him a key, or perhaps a trap. Was she Black's protector, or complicit in his doom? The note implied a viper in the Yard, Crow, or someone higher. The streets of Soho beckoned, slick and treacherous, mirroring the case's twists. Poirot's cane tapped the pavement, a steady beat against the uncertainty. The locket, the poisoned letter, the sibling bond. Each revelation peeled back a layer, but the core remained shrouded. As they hailed a cab, Poirot glanced back at the tea-room's window, where Lydia's silhouette had vanished. The game intensified, and the shadows of Oxford Yard stretched longer, promising revelations that could shatter the Yard itself. Chapter 8. The Brothers' Secret. The gaming club in St. James's, a dimly lit enclave of 1933 London, thrummed with the low hum of vice. Cigar smoke curled like tendrils of fog through the air, weaving past green baize tables where men in evening dress wagered fortunes on cards and dice. Its ash falling unnoticed onto his rumpled suit. "Monsieur Black," Poirot began, his voice a melodic blend of courtesy and steel. "Your brother, Inspector Black, was a man of duty. Yet you, his kin, live in the shadow of debt. Hercule Poirot wonders, did these debts drive you to desperate acts?" Edmund's laugh was brittle, a sound swallowed by the club's din. "Reginald was the good one, Mr. Poirot, always bailing me out, cleaning up my messes. Why would I kill him? He was my lifeline." His fingers trembled as he lit another cigarette, the match's flare illuminating the lines etched into his face. Japp leaned in, his voice gruff. "Lifeline or not, Edmund, you owed money, big money, to Victor Slade, among others. And we've got witnesses placing you at a row with him the night before Reginald's death. Care to explain?" Edmund's eyes flicked to the bar's polished surface, reflecting the chandelier's glow like a distorted mirror. "Slade's a thug," he muttered. "I owed him a tenner from a bad bet. He got rough, sure, but I didn't touch Reginald. I was here, playing cards when it happened." His alibi was flimsy, the club's patrons too drunk or distracted to be reliable witnesses. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mental gears turning. "Your debts, monsieur. They are a chain, no? And your brother, he grew weary of paying. Did he refuse you, perhaps, on the eve of his death?" Edmund's hand froze mid-sip, whiskey sloshing in the glass. "He was angry. Yes, said he was done covering for me. But kill him? I'd sooner cut off my own hand." His voice cracked, and Poirot noted the desperation, the raw edge of a man teetering on ruin. Japp produced a photograph of the crime scene, the vial of cyanide glinting in Reginald's lifeless hand. "Your coat, Edmund. Fibers from it were found in Oxford Yard. You visited him there, didn't you?"
Edmund's face paled, the cigarette dropping to the bar. I saw him that day, yes. Dropped by his office, begged for a loan, through Poirot's thoughts. Crow, with his tampered logs and cyanide traces, loomed larger in the web. Japp's pen scratched furiously, his scowl deepening.
Crow, eh? And you didn't think to tell us sooner? What else are you hiding? The club's atmosphere grew heavier, the laughter from a nearby table jarring against the interrogation's tension. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the polished floor like a metronome. Monsieur Black, your debts. They tie you to Slade, to Crow. Did you know of a safe in your brother's home? Documents, perhaps, that could expose this corruption? Edmund's eyes widened, a flash of fear betraying his composure. A safe? He never told me, but he kept things locked away, always did. Said it was for my protection. Japp's constable had searched the Black residence earlier that day, and Poirot revealed a critical find. A hidden safe behind a painting in Reginald's study, its lock recently tampered with. Inside were documents, ledgers detailing smuggling routes, payments, and a coded reference to H.C. Harlan Crow? The papers confirmed Reginald's pursuit of corruption within the yard, a motive for murder that pointed to someone desperate to stay hidden. These documents, Poirot said, his voice low, they are the key, no? Your brother died for them. Did you know their contents? Edmund shook his head, sweat beading on his brow. I swear I didn't. Reginald kept me out of his work, said it was too dangerous. His voice trembled, but Poirot's gaze was relentless, peeling back layers of evasion. The safe's contents were a breakthrough, but the tampering suggested someone else had sought them. Crow, Slade, or another shadow in the fog? The club's chandelier flickered, casting fleeting shadows that danced like suspects across the walls. Poirot produced the crime scene note, "Justice comes for all," its elegant script a haunting refrain. This note, monsieur, it speaks of vengeance. Your brother's enemies, they are many. Were you one? Edmund's hand shook as he reached for his whiskey, the glass clinking against the bar. I loved him, Poirot. He was all each a potential conspirator. Monsieur Black, Poirot said softly. Your brother's cigar case, laced with cyanide. Did you ever see him smoke? Edmund nodded, his voice hoarse. Every night, after dinner. He'd sit in his study, puffing away. Said it cleared his mind. The cigar, Poirot knew, was the method. A subtle, intimate poison. Someone close to Reginald had laced it. Someone with access to his habits. Edmund's knowledge of the routine was damning, yet his fear suggested he was a pawn, not the mastermind. Poirot filed the thought away, his grey cells tracing the threads, the safe's documents, Crow's initials, Slade's grudges, Lydia's warnings. As the interrogation drew to a close, the club's telephone rang shrilly behind the bar, cutting through the murmur like a blade. The barman answered, his face paling as he gestured to Edmund. It's for you, Mr. Black. Sounds urgent. Edmund hesitated, his cigarette forgotten, and shuffled to the phone. Poirot and Japp exchanged a glance, sensing a shift in the air. Edmund's voice was low, urgent as he spoke, but the words were indistinct. He hung up abruptly, his face ashen, and turned to them. Wrong number, he muttered, but his hands shook, betraying the lie. Japp's eyes narrowed. Wrong number, my foot. Who was it, Edmund? But Edmund backed away, knocking over a stool in his haste. I've got to go, he stammered, grabbing his coat. Poirot's cane tapped once, sharply. Monsieur, the truth does not flee. Who threatens you? Edmund's eyes were wild, but he said nothing, bolting for the door. The club's patrons watched, their whispers rising like the fog outside. Poirot and Japp followed, stepping into the rain-slicked street. The fog had thickened, swallowing the gas lamp's glow. and Edmund's figure vanished into the haze. "Blast it," Japp growled, pulling his coat tighter. "He's running scared. That call was no mistake." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind racing. The call was a warning, or a summons, a move in the killer's game. The documents, the fibers, the phone call, each clue tightened.
Poirot's preferred Darjeeling tea, served in a delicate porcelain cup that rested on a mahogany table. Poirot stood before a chalkboard, its surface a mosaic of names, clues, and connections scrawled in his precise hand. Chief Inspector James Japp sat in an armchair, his trench coat slung over its back, his notebook open but untouched as he watched Poirot's methodical dance of deduction. The murder of Inspector Reginald Black in Oxford Yard had woven a web of deceit, and now, with suspects interrogated and clues amassed, Poirot's grey cells were poised to unravel it. "Mon ami Japp," Poirot began, his voice a melodic blend of confidence and gravitas, "we stand at the precipice of truth. The death of Inspector Black, it is no simple crime. The poison, the note, the red herrings, they form a tapestry, intricate and deliberate. Hercule Poirot shall now weave it together." His green eyes gleamed, reflecting the firelight as he tapped his cane against the floor, a metronome to his thoughts. Japp leaned forward, his scowl softened by anticipation. "About time, Poirot. We've got a widow, a convict, a copper, a gambler, and a mystery woman, all with reasons to want Black dead. Lay it out for me." Poirot turned to the chalkboard, where the suspects' names, Eleanor Black, Victor Slade, Harlan Crowe, Edmund Black, Lydia Voss, were linked by lines to motives and clues. "The method, it is our starting point," he said, pointing to a sketch of the cyanide vial. "Poison, delivered through a cigar, not the vial in Black's hand. The vial, it is a misdirection, staged to suggest suicide. But who had the means, the opportunity, the knowledge of his habits?" Japp nodded, flipping through his notebook. "Black smoked every evening, like clockwork. Someone close knew that." Poirot's finger traced a line to Eleanor Black. Madame Black, the widow. Her handkerchief, stained with lipstick, was found in Black's pocket, a red herring, too pristine to be genuine. Her receipt places her near Oxford Yard, but her letter, found in the garden shed, was to her husband, an affectionate note from years past. "Not our killer." Japp's brow furrowed. "Her story checks out. Her contact, Elias Kane, confirms she was at a cafe. But that note, it's got me looking sideways at my own men." Edmund Black's name drew Poirot's attention next. The brother, drowning in debt. Fibers from his coat in Oxford Yard. Another planted clue, too clean. His fear after the phone call suggests he is a target, not a perpetrator. He knew of Black's cigar habit, but lacks the cunning for poison. Japp sighed. "Edmund's a wreck, not a murderer. So who's left? Crowe?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he circled Harlan Crowe's name. Sergeant Crowe, the ambitious colleague. He had access to cyanide in the Yard's lab, opportunity via tampered logs, and motive. Black blocked his promotion and uncovered his ties to the smuggling ring. The documents in Black's safe, marked HC, implicate him in corruption. The cigar, laced with cyanide, was a method only one with intimate access could employ. Japp's fist clenched. "Crowe, the rotten apple! But we need proof, Poirot. The missing file. Did he take it?" Poirot nodded, his cane tapping sharply. The file, stolen from Black's desk, contained proof of Crowe's dealings with smugglers. But another detail troubles me. The vial's fingerprints. They overlap oddly, as if two hands held it. A second conspirator, perhaps? Or a mistake by our killer?
He paused, letting the fire's crackle fill the silence, a natural break for the weight of his words. The chalkboard was a map of deception, its lines converging on Crow, yet the fog of doubt lingered. Japp leaned back, rubbing his temples. So Crow stages the scene in Oxford Yard, knowing Black's routine, uses the cigar to poison him, plants the vial to fake suicide, and writes that note, "Justice comes for all," to throw us off. But why the theatrics? Poirot's moustache twitched, a spark of insight. The note. It is his signature, mon ami. Crow believes himself untouchable, a dispenser of justice. But he under a
window, where the fog pressed like a living thing, obscuring Baker Street's gas lamps. As Poirot poured a second cup of tea, the room's silence was shattered by a sharp knock at the door. Japp tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for his truncheon. Poirot, unruffled, set the teapot down and opened the door, revealing a figure in the shadows of the landing. Harlan Crow stepped into the firelight, his uniform crisp but his eyes cold, a revolver glinting in his hand. "You've meddled enough, Poirot," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You think you've got me, but you're wrong." Japp sprang to his feet, his truncheon raised, but Poirot remained serene, his cane resting lightly in his hand. "Monsieur Crow, you come armed to a battle of wits? Hercule Poirot is not so easily intimidated." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with resolve, the gray cells poised for the final move. The room crackled with tension, the fire's glow illuminating Crow's taut features. A man cornered, but dangerous. The fog outside seemed to thicken, as if Oxford Yard itself held its breath. Was Crow here to confess, to threaten, or to silence them forever? The revolver's barrel gleamed, a stark reminder of the stakes, and Poirot's mind raced to outmaneuver the man who had woven this deadly game. The truth was within reach, but the next moments would determine whether justice or death would prevail. Chapter 10. The Revelation. The fire in Hercule Poirot's Baker Street flat crackled softly, its warm glow a fragile bulwark against the fog that pressed against the windows of 1933 London. The room, with its oak-paneled walls and shelves of leather-bound books, was a haven of order, yet the air thrummed with the electric tension of a showdown. Sergeant Harlan Crow stood in the doorway, his Scotland Yard uniform crisp, but his face taut, the revolver in his hand gleaming with cold intent. His blue eyes, once disciplined, now burned with a cornered animal's desperation. Chief Inspector James Japp, poised in the armchair.
Worse. But Poirot raised a hand, his gesture commanding silence, his eyes never leaving Crow's. "Non, mon ami Japp," Poirot said softly, stepping forward, the firelight casting his shadow across the chalkboard behind him, where names and clues formed a tapestry of deception. "Let us finish this game. Monsieur Crow, you are the architect of Inspector Black's demise, are you not? Hercule Poirot sees all. The poison, the note, the red herrings. They point to you." Crow's laugh was sharp, a bark that echoed in the quiet room. "You're mad, Belgian! Prove it!" Poirot's cane tapped the floor once sharply, a metronome to his deduction. "Very well. Let us unravel the threads. Inspector Black. He was poisoned in Oxford Yard, a cigar laced with cyanide. His evening ritual, known to those close to him. The vial in his hand? It was a stage prop, oui? A misdirection to suggest suicide." He pointed to the chalkboard, where a sketch of the vial was linked to Crow's name. "You had access to cyanide in the Yard's evidence lab, monsieur. Traces were found on your desk, faint but damning. Crow's eyes narrowed, but he held his ground. Lab traces mean nothing. I handle evidence daily. Poirot's smile widened, a spark of triumph in his gaze. Ah, but the cigar case. It tells a different story. Cyanide, carefully applied to the cigars Black smoked each night. Only one with intimate knowledge of his habits could execute such a plan. You, his colleague, shared his office, his routines. You knew. Japp's fist clenched, his voice rising, and the note, "Justice comes for all." Your handwriting, Crow. We matched it to your duty logs despite your tampering. Poirot nodded, producing the note from an evidence envelope, its elegant script a silent accusation. This note, it is your flourish, Monsieur Crow. A taunt, a declaration of your warped sense of justice. You believed Black's investigation into the smuggling ring threatened you, no? Crow's revolver wavered, a flicker of doubt crossed.
Tailored and placed with care. Each a distraction, but Hercule Poirot sees through the fog. Japp interjected, his voice thick with anger. And the missing file, stolen from Black's desk. You took it, didn't you? To hide your tracks. Poirot's eyes gleamed, revealing a final piece. The file, mon ami, was recovered by Mademoiselle Voss, who hid it for safety. It names you, Monsieur Crow, as the disloyal officer Black pursued. Your debts to Edmund, your rivalry with Black, your access to the Yard's resources, all converge. Crow's face twisted, his revolver steadying as he stepped forward. You're clever, Poirot, but you've no proof. Papers can be forged, witnesses bought. Poirot's smile was serene, unshaken. Ah, but the truth, it is not so easily buried. The anonymous letter, the Belgian will fail. Your script again, sent to Japp to intimidate. And the ambush in Whitechapel, a hired thug to silence us. Your desperation betrays you. The fire cast long shadows, dancing across Crow's taut features. Poirot continued, his voice a relentless tide. The logical chain, it is clear. You argued with Black over the smuggling case, fearing exposure. You laced his cigar with cyanide, knowing his evening ritual. You staged the vial to suggest suicide, planting clues to frame others, Slade, Eleanor, Edmund. But Lydia Voss, his sister, warned him of danger, and her note to me, "Trust no one at the Yard," confirmed your betrayal. Crow's revolver trembled, his voice a snarl. Black was a threat. He'd have torn the Yard apart, exposed things better left buried. I did what I had to. The confession hung in the air, a crack in his armor. Japp lunged forward, his truncheon raised, but Crow's gun snapped up, freezing him in place. "Stay back, Japp!" he barked, his eyes wild. Poirot, undeterred, stepped closer, his cane a quiet anchor. "Monsieur Crow, you speak of justice, yet you betray it. Your alliance with the smugglers, it enriched you, but Black's honor threatened all. You forced Ed." Beyond the windows seemed to lift, as if London itself exhaled. The case was closed, but the scars it left, on the Yard, on Black's family, would linger. As the constables led Crow away, Poirot returned to the chalkboard, erasing the lines with a slow, deliberate hand. The clues had aligned. The cigar's cyanide, the safe's documents, the note's script. The red herrings, planted fingerprints, forged letters, pristine fibers, had fallen away, revealing Crow's betrayal. Eleanor's grief was genuine, Slade's anger a distraction, Edmund's debts a pressure point, and Lydia's loyalty a beacon. The corruption within the Yard, though exposed, would haunt Japp's trust.
Japp slumped into the armchair, his notebook forgotten. Blimey, Poirot. You cut it close. Thought we'd lose you to that gun.
Poirot smiled faintly, pouring a fresh cup of tea. Hercule Poirot does not lose, mon ami. The truth, it is like the fog. It obscures, but it cannot hide forever. He sipped his tea, the fire's warmth returning to the room. Outside, Baker Street was quiet, the fog retreating to reveal the gas lamp's steady glow. Oxford Yard's shadow had lifted, but London's underbelly pulsed on, its secrets waiting for the next game. Poirot gazed at the chalkboard, now blank, and murmured, "The order, it is restored, but the heart, it mourns." The case was solved, but the cost of justice weighed heavy, a reminder that even in victory, the city's fog held countless untold stories.